So let's get started. The first thing is we need to get our materials. So you will need vocabulary words, the definitions, and a variety of ways for students to practice the words. For today's model, I will use a system that I have used and trained teachers on for the past 10 years. In this system, there are 3 components for 1 unit, 3 lessons, 3 quizzes, and 1 assessment. Day 1, we'll start with day 1 of lessons. For day 1 of lessons, students are required to practice their context clues. And in the second part, the definitions, I challenge students to use their answers from the top to match the definition at the bottom. I'm going to model here for you using a think aloud of how this system is set up. So you'll see here that we have the vocabulary lesson and the day. We have the list of vocabulary words across the top. And then we have the directions for students to use context clues to determine the meaning of the bolded word. We know that this is a standard-based activity and it helps with comprehension. I want students to circle the words in the sentence that help them determine the meaning of the vocabulary word and then write their definition on the line provided. In this particular section, I did not take a grade. So if students wrote something on the line, they received credit. It was more important that they worked on using the words around the vocabulary word to figure out the meaning. So, number 1, in an effort to gain more autonomy, Jessica moved out of her parents' house. Okay, autonomy. So I'm not really sure what that means, but I do know that if you are moving out and it sounds like she's trying to gain something, I think autonomy might mean that she wants more freedom. So I'm going to write freedom here. Okay, let's try this again with number 2, still modeling a think aloud. Eli's absences from school became chronic, resulting in 30 missed days by year end. Okay, so resulting and became, these words are important, but he missed 30 days by the end of the year. So his absences became chronic. Maybe chronic means often or a habit. That's what I think that means. And so from there, I would stop the model and then I would continue the gradual release and I would do a few more with students and then I would have them complete the rest of the sentences. Again, the goal here is to work on context clues. We already have the vocabulary words. So this next portion down in part B with the definitions, I have already used context clues to come up with what I believe the definition of these 2 words are, autonomy and chronic. So I see freedom here. Let's see if I see any words down here that might match my definition. Independence. Okay. I think that autonomy means independence. Now, I definitely want them to match all the words up first. They may write it in pencil to see if they are correct. But the goal here is just to make sure that they are checking what they have written here to see if those definitions apply down here. Now, I did take a grade for this section, but not for this section. So I would go in and I would write in autonomy because I'm pretty sure that that's what this means. So then my next one was chronic, and that means often or a habit. And so, okay, emotionally moving. Well, I don't think that fits right there. Lessening or weakening. No, I don't think that fits. To block or obstruct in such a slight way as to be almost unnoticeable. Well, I think 30 days is pretty noticeable. Moving backward or returning to an earlier, less advanced condition. No, I don't think it's that. A strong belief. Constant or habitual. Well, you know what? I don't know what habitual means, but I do know what constant means. And constant is what a habit is. So I am going to write chronic here. And so this takes us through the first day of vocabulary. I want students to start at application. It is not a good use of my instructional time for me to give them words and then have them copy down these definitions or have them to go look them up in a dictionary. What if they're not using the same dictionary? What if they're not using the same definitions? How does that work? and how will that impact my instruction further down the line. So I'm going to front load it. I'm going to give them what they need. I'm going to have them start at application. So this would be day 1 of a vocabulary lesson. From there, we move into day 2. Simple Frayer model, set up a little differently so that we can be more efficient with our paper. But one thing that may be different is we definitely have them write the word in here. So we had the word autonomy. I'm going to write it in. And I had a definition that said independence. So I'm going to use that as my synonym. And an antonym of independence is to be dependent. So I'm going to put that here. And so I can go in and I can do a definition. I have to have a sentence. It's important to reiterate to students that you want this to be an original sentence. It should not be a copy and paste from the internet. My part of speech is given to me on my day 1 if I'm unsure. So autonomy is a noun. And so I'm going to put an in there for a noun. And then derivatives or illustration. And so I really like this box because it gives students an option to either give you different parts of speech for this word or to draw an illustration. And so you might have students draw an illustration of something that they feel gives them autonomy. But it's really great for students who might be more artistic. And so what I found is when students do these Frayer models, my artistic students really fill these boxes up, and it gives me a very good idea of how much they really understand the word. So from there, it moves us on to day 3. And day 3 is a combination of 2 different activities. Here we have definitions, and I'm asking them to write an original definition for each of their vocabulary words, giving them 1 point for each. And then I'm asking them to be creative. So they can write about anything they like, but I want them to use 8 of their vocabulary words. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They have 12 vocabulary words here. I'm asking them to use 8. And so that they are aware of the 8 that they use, and so that I can easily identify those 8, I ask them to underline or box out. And so again, this gives students the autonomy. Look at that, use your vocabulary words. It gives them the autonomy to put the words together in any format that they choose. And it gives me an idea of not only their use of the vocabulary words, but also their writing skills. So that takes us through a unit. Once we make it through an entire unit, so we've done several different activities over several days, what we do then is we do a game day. And so we might do a variety of things. I've had them do relays where they come and they give the definition and they're in teams, or we've done bingo. But the game day is a really great way to get students involved. From there, we move into quizzes. And so a quiz is set up in such a way that students have a variety of ways to show that they know the words. And so they use each word 1 time. We have a written portion. We have some multiple choice. We have to use the word in 2 different sentences and give examples and things of that nature. So they have the quiz. And then after they complete 3 units of vocabulary, mind you, we are constantly using this vocabulary in our writing. I am using it as the teacher in conversation, and students are using it in their writing and in their conversation. I'm acknowledging when students are saying the words in discussion. Then we have an assessment. And so the beautiful thing about the assessment is that it takes all of the words from those 3 units and it requires students to show mastery of those words in a variety of ways. They never know how it's going to show up. And so on this assessment, for example, they have matching. This is going to be my lowest DOK. Then they have sentences, they have some close reading, they have definitions, they have analogies, which proves to be the most challenging part for them, and they have a short story. Important to note there is that the way that this assessment is set up is they only use each vocabulary word 1 time. And so when they go through and they're marking off their words at the top, they cross off each word. If it's used here on the side for the sentences or for the definitions, they can cross those words off. So that is a bit of a help for them. And then here, this proves to be a bit more challenging because, again, we have independence is to, well, we learned a word today, that is autonomy. So autonomy would go here. And then as a student, I have to figure out this relationship. Is this, are these synonyms or antonyms before I can answer this question? And so it really is a challenge for students, but it does give them a variety of ways to practice their vocabulary. And so when we talk about a vocabulary system, it is important that we not only have the lessons in place, but we also want to make sure that we are considering our setup. So we have our lessons, we have our quizzes, we have our assessment, but we need to figure out how we're going to map this out. And so for the purposes of this example, we are going to use our calendar here. We have 3 months because depending on how often we see students, that's going to dictate how much vocabulary we can get done within a block and how much we are assigning for homework. So I am going to go with the 4th as the first day back, and we're going to say that this, for the purposes of this example, is block scheduling. And so for the month of January, I'm going to see students every other day because it is block scheduling. I have a holiday here, which is going to throw me off. So I have every other day, I get to see my students. And so this is just the month of January. So what I want to do now is I know that I have 3 lessons for each unit, and I know that I have a quiz day, and I know that I have a vocabulary assessment day. So I'm probably going to have to go into February with this. But the way that I use this calendar is I'll say, okay, I have vocab lesson 1, day 1. I have vocab lesson 1, day 2, which is my Freyer model. And I have vocab lesson 1, day 3. Now, if I want to throw a game day in there or a review day for students, this might be review here. And that means I'm not going to have my first quiz until the 14th. So that is going to be vocab 1, quiz 1. Okay. And so then I just keep this up. So I'm going to, on the day of a quiz, now I can give them a quiz and then give them a new set of vocabulary, or I can just roll that vocabulary over to the next day. Now, for the purposes of this example, I'm just going to roll it over to the next day. I'm going to do vocab 2, day 1, vocab 2, day 2, vocab 2, day 3, and then I'm going to have vocab 2, quiz 1. And I really could just call it a quiz. And so this continues on, and I would use this calendar for the entire semester is how I mapped it out. That helps me understand how many different vocabulary lessons students can cover in a semester. It also helps me understand how many words we can cover, how much practice we need to have. And so then it helps that, lastly, it helps me understand how many lessons I really need to come up with. Ideally, what's happening with vocabulary is we are planning it out. We know what we're going to read down here. And so those words are being chosen up here so that students actually have practice with those words before they get to this text. Because if I am turning the page and looking at the text and right after I get the vocabulary words, I don't actually know what they mean, and it's not going to aid in comprehension. So that wraps up what we're doing today. When we talk about a vocabulary system, we want to make sure that we have a calendar, we want to have our lessons, we want to have our quizzes, we want to have our assessment so that we can ensure the students are getting consistent practice with the vocabulary words. One last thing to share is the greatness about the assessment is because students are being tasked with showing mastery of all 3 units, because they have so many vocabulary words over the course of the time that we are going over these. So mind you, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and we were already at vocab 3, day 1. So this takes us into February. They are constantly practicing those words. I am constantly using those words and requiring them to use those words in their writing. And then by the time we get to the exam, they should be pretty familiar with those words. When we move on to another unit of vocabulary, we don't discard these words. These are still posted on our word wall. We still use them in our writing. The goal is to build their vocabulary because we have chosen words intentionally that will show up in their reading. So I hope you found this video helpful today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put something in the comments. You can also find this particular resource in my Teachers Pay Teachers, on my Teachers Pay Teachers page, J. Shannon Literacy, and I will link it below. Thank you and have a great day.